All right, the next two components that I'm going to tackle are this one and this one. These two components are actually identical to these two that I just replaced. I think they were 100 nanofarad, 250 volt capacitors. So what I want to do in this video also is just, show you guys how I tackle these. Now, like I said, this circuit board is actually pretty easy to work with because desoldering actually very easy, so that's good. So the reason, I talked about, get one of these things for yourself because it just makes life so much easier. You don't have to sit there and try to hold the circuit board and try to do, your work, desoldering and stuff like that. Like I said, all you have to do is turn it this way. And let's put it in the picture so you guys can see. And this is what I was talking about. Like, I have a magic marker mark here, so I know I have to desolder this and this. That'll take that component on the other side off. And I have to desolder here, and I have to desolder here, and that'll take the second one off. And that'll make it easy for us to get the new ones on. So let's go ahead and hopefully I can make this happen because my camera is actually like right in my face, so I have to figure out a way how to work on this board, but we'll get it figured out. Now, if you also notice on these older vintage boards, they left a lot of the wire that connects the component to the circuit board. So as well as trying to desolder the component, you might have to try to move the wire up and straight so you can get it out. So let's try to tackle this one first. Actually, you know what? Let's make life even easier. Let me show you what I use. This is a flux, whatever they call it, syringe or whatever. But one thing I can tell you when you're working on these kinds of projects, don't be stingy on your flux. You can never put too much flux on something you're working on, but you can definitely put too little flux on something you're working on. And like I said, use plenty of flux and it'll make life a lot easier. So let's put a nice good gob of flux on these, and it will make life easier, trust me. So we'll try to hit this one first. Start getting it melted. You see where my mark is, so and get the hang of your soldering iron, because sometimes you'll hit it and the wick will stick to it. So just hit it again, get it to unstick. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and try to get as much solder off as I can. Then I'll go back with I use a little wire cutting tool to try to get these pins up where I can get them out. But for now, let's just go ahead and let's wick off as much solder as we can. And you see what I mean about the flux? You can never use too much flux. The more flux, the better. The easier this job will be. And there's a lot of videos on YouTube that you can watch, that show you some good desoldering techniques. These old vintage boards, they're pretty rough and tough. They're resilient. Some desoldering that you might do, you have to be careful because the board doesn't like too much heat, and what could happen is you can actually pull up the I forget the term they call it, but the pads. You want to be careful because you could pull up the pads, and once you do that, then you have to get into a whole nother repairing techniques. So now what I use is this little guy. Not sure what it's called, but you might be able to see that little part number. But get yourself a nice pair of snips. because what you'll see is this one that we just soldered right here, you can get those snips in there. Either snip it off or pull it straight. If you can snip it off, that's great. That'll really make life easier. So, but I'll show you. See, you get your little snips under there. Now I have that up straight. So I'll leave that and show you how that actually works in getting this little component off. From what I'm seeing right here, I think this one still has a little bit of solder that we probably should try to wick off. So, and this one too, probably, yeah. But actually, you know what? My markings are now missing, so this is the beauty of this tool. Just flip this over. This one and this one are the ones we're working on. So this one here, yeah, you can see we still have some solder that we need to take off of there. And let's see where the other, yeah, little solder here too. I'm sorry, this one and this one. Let's try to wick off some more solder off of those before we actually try to remove it. So again, this stuff is not expensive, so don't be afraid to use plenty of flux. Flux is your friend. It helps you. Let me make sure I'm on the right spot. No, that was a resistor. So we're over here. This one here. Put plenty of flux on there. You know, once your wick starts looking like that, you just want to cut it off. I use a pair of these. I don't know what you actually call them. These I got. These are like industrial scissors. They pretty much cut everything. So, you know, snip your little piece of wick off, get some fresh solder wick, and go at it again. Another thing I recommend when you're doing any kind of soldering or anything like this, this tip that I have on here right now, I've had on here for quite a long time. Now, you know, you can watch some videos and you'll see about tip cleaning and stuff like that. I'll tell you what, I've been using this for a long time. The only thing that I do before I shut down my soldering iron is I put a lot of fresh solder on it. I'll put it into the, let me show you. Get yourself some of this. You want this. It's good for cleaning your tips. Clean your tip, put some more fresh solder on it, and just before you're ready to shut your soldering iron down, put it in the holder and shut it down. By having fresh solder on the tip is pretty much going to do what, you know, a lot of those other things claim to do, is keep the tip from oxidizing, keeps it clean. Just put some solder on your tip, throw it back in your holder, and shut it off. It'll be fine. Once you fire it back up, clean it off with the brass braid, and you'll be good to go again. Like I said, I've been using this for a long time. I've had no trouble with it. So let's go in here. Let's try to wick off some more of this solder. You know, press down a little bit. See how that solder is going onto the wick? Again here. And pretty soon we'll be able to either snap these connections off, or we'll be able to actually pull it through the board. But you definitely want to, you know, get it on that connection and on the circuit board, and get as much as of that solder as you can off. And then we'll be able to easily remove these components. That should be enough. That one's actually probably would fall right out. Let's see if we can get a little more off of this one. And what we'll do is we'll try to either clip this little end off, or we'll try to straighten it and pull it through. Alright, let's give it a go. So as I said, this one here, now you see what happened? I just did that. That's what I was talking about. If you look here, I actually started lifting that pad off the circuit board. So you really want to be careful on how much heat you're putting on these things. Because now, hopefully I'll be able to get that component out. But I'm going to have to do something, you know, when I put the next component in. I do still have all this trace here that I can connect to. So, you know, I'm still out of the woods. We'll be okay. So let's just snip that one off. Let's try to snip this one off. Yeah, see, that pad I damaged, so, but we'll get it. This one here, as you can see, we can try to lift that connection up like that. Let's snip it off just to make sure we can actually get this thing out. And then the other side is over here. Let's snip that off. There we go. And then, like I said, you know, this thing is so handy to have. So we got this one. So now it gets a little tricky here. So what we got to do is we got to try to get a hold on that. Did I do the wrong one? No. Yep, it was this one. So let's snip that off. You know, this thing really does come in handy, but you still can't really see too well. You always have to be flipping, making sure I got this connection, See, this one actually is probably about to come off. It already came off, so that's good. We got that one removed. Let's see if we have any wiggle. Now, if you'll notice, something just happened here. This black wire, we desoldered it from somewhere, but that's the importance of taking pictures. So I can go back in my pictures and I can find out exactly where this black wire goes. So we're not going to worry about that right now. But this one, this is the second one that we're going to replace. So it should come out pretty easy. I think this is one side. Might not be though. Now, like I said, yeah. Sometimes it's hard to see, but you know what? We got enough of the solder off where we can snip these leads off. There you go. See? It already fell out, so we're good. We got those two components out. So what we're going to do now, let's take a look on the front. See, you can actually see here. The reason I'm replacing these is these components actually chipped and started falling apart. So that's why we have to replace these. So you can see, let me get my pointer. We got one here, one here. So what we're going to do, we'll flip it over. We'll try to get as much more solder as we can. What we want to see is an open hole. So this way we can take the replacement and stick it right in. And then solder it in, and then we're good to go. So the other one is here. Here. You actually see we have a little bit more of the lead for the component, but this one, this one, this one, this one. And this one, these two actually are clear. We have a little bit something here, so we'll try to get that off and get the new component in. And I did say I'm going to try to not make this video too long, but you know what? I've watched a lot of videos, and it didn't matter to me whether it was half an hour, as long as I got, you know, a lot of good information from the video. So it's this one we're going to try to get out now. Let's see if we can get a through hole in this. And if you can't, it's no problem. You know what? We'll stick the first lead into that one. We'll heat it up and see if we can get it to go through. And I think that's probably what we're going to have to do here. So let's grab our new component. Let's go this way. But as you can see how helpful these things are. You've got to have one of these. Now these capacitors are what they call non-polarized. So it doesn't matter which way you put this capacitor in, but when I'm rebuilding something, I kind of decide I'm going to put the capacitor in so it kind of follows where do I see the other capacitors, like information and stuff like that. So I'll try to follow that as much as I can. So I think we'll take, there's the information on that capacitor. I think we'll go put it to the right, keep it the same. Actually, you know what? That poked in, so that's great. So we'll turn this upside down and just pull these leads to either side just to hold it, you know, nice and flat. Because when you're doing these restorations, you still want your circuit board to look nice once you're done. So let's see if we get lucky and we can still, so again, got my information to the right, so I'll put this information to the front and I'll try to stick to that every time. So yeah, we really got lucky because that one went in with no problem at all. So here we are. And again, don't be stingy with the flux. Flux is your friend. Once we solder these in, I think we did notice that one of the pads came up. So if it doesn't solder in, what I'll do is leave this component lead on, because what we can do with this is we can use this. We can stretch it over to the trace on the circuit board and just solder it right to the trace of the circuit board, and that'll be fine. You'll have no problems. We'll do some tests to make sure, you know, everything's good. So let's get our solder out, and if you guys are interested, this is what I use. It's by Kester. You can see the dimensions and everything. This is a rosin core solder, meaning there is flux already in this center of this solder. So I still use flux, but you know, it's helpful. This is a leaded solder and it does have flux in the center, so, and you'll see how nice this flows too. So let's hit this one first. And don't leave your soldering iron on too long, just enough to get the connection made. I think this is the one where we lost our pad, but let's see. You put enough solder, see how it actually drifted onto the trace, so we might be okay, but that might not actually be the one that we lost the pad on, so we'll find out in a minute. There you go. Leave your soldering iron on for a little bit. Now, see that right there? Let me get my little pointer. If you'll notice, when I soldered this lead of this component, this one next to it had a hole in it. That's probably where that black wire went. So just leave it like that. Like I said, please make sure you take pictures before you do this project, because I'll be able to go back in my picture and see for sure this is where that black wire came out. The reason it came out is because we were desoldering, so it just, you know, it came out. But it's not a problem as long as you take pictures and you know exactly where every connection goes back. So put a good amount of solder in there, you know, you'll see how it works, and that looks good. And like I said, we'll do some testing later to make sure our solder joints are working, and in the end, we'll know for sure when we can get this amplifier working again. So I'm just going to go ahead and start cleaning this up, and we'll probably continue on with the video with a couple more component replacements. So we'll be right back.